From hell, Mr. Lusk, sore. I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate it. Was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you will only wait a while longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
Casey, here's your Chianti. Sorry.
Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey.
So raise a glass and let's get started.
All right, Liz, what are you drinking today?
Let me pull out the bottle. I am drinking Suave. Enema Vin Suave 2017 Suave Classico. And it is an Italian Suave. It is from Verona.
Fair Verona.
Which is where we lay our scene. I have not had a taste of it yet, but I'm very excited.
You said suave like 6 times.
Ooh.
Is it good?
Really nice.
I won't like it, will I?
Probably not. It's got a little bit of acidity to it. It's a high acidity white wine.
It's not bad.
It's got a little bit of honeycomb and floral to it, but the high acidity keeps it from being too sweet. It's not too bad.
I like it.
Yeah, it's good.
I am drinking Gewürztraminer. Gewürztraminer.
You have to make the face. Gewürztraminer.
Gewürztraminer. It's a German white wine with notes of rose, spices, and exotic fruits. It accompanies aperitif, Chinese food, cheeses, and fruit-based desserts. And as your husband told us, apparently it is the right wine for Thanksgiving.
Yes, it is. If you need a white wine for Thanksgiving, I highly recommend a Gewürztraminer or Traminette.
Ooh, it's sweet. I like it.
Yes. Oh, good. Yeah. I'll definitely try it. I probably won't like it.
Probably not.
It's not too bad, but it's too sweet for me. What? Okay, there it is. Yeah.
Okay.
There's definitely some honey in that wine, too.
Yes.
Honey aromas.
Okay, today we are recapping our reading of Maureen Johnson's first book in the Shades of London series, The Name of the Star.
Yes, and we read the prequel for your birthday, which was excellent.
We read the prequel for my birthday about Stephen Dean, and how he came to possess the sight.
Yes.
Which brings us around to this story. The main character of this story is Rory Devereaux.
Yes.
She is a
Louisianan
teenager.
Have you ever been to Louisiana?
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah. My dad's born in Louisiana, so.
I was a camp counselor in Louisiana for a summer camp one year.
Louisianans are rednecks with hot sauce.
It's an interesting place, and there's definitely a lot of superstition and a lot of
superstition, a lot of magic,
hoodoo, voodoo, all that jazz.
And alligators.
Yep, and alligators, and it's hot.
Yeah, we're both good old Southern girls, so we totally understand where Rory is coming from.
Yes, so Rory is
she's an American exchange student.
A foreign exchange student from America come to London to study for a semester abroad.
Yes.
And right about the time that she shows up in town, someone starts recreating the Jack the Ripper murders.
Copycat Ripper murders. I think
it's fair to say that Jack the Ripper is like the serial killer.
He is. And a lot of that is because of he was one of the first serial killers.
And he's also one that was never caught.
Yes, the media sensationalized him quite a bit.
He was...
Because he only had...
5.
Yeah,
well,
5. 5
so
to
there were 5 for sure, and
Which,
potentially a 6th and 7th.
A serial killer is definition of someone who commits at least 3 similar murders.
But not at the same time.
No,
because
not
if you commit more than 2 murders at the same time, you're a mass killer. If you commit more than two murders over the course of a period of time, and if they have a identifying theme or like things that are consistent and like patterns that are same, that's when you're a serial killer. And
I
Jack
like
the
how
Ripper.
both of us know that and we don't have to look it up.
Well, true crime. And we, as podcasters, also listen to a lot of podcasts. Have you ever listened to My Favorite Murder?
Yes, I have.
Yes. My Favorite Murder is a really good podcast. You should check out if you're interested in these sort of things. Listen to our podcast, ladies. We love yours.
Yes, please do. We love you.
At any rate, Jack the Ripper was the nickname given to a serial killer who was active in the Whitechapel district of London.
Yes.
Around 1888.
We really need to read that one Sherlock Holmes book.
Yes. He killed prostitutes and was very surgical in like the way that
he was. That's why they believed he was a doctor.
Yes, he removed internal organs. And
there were paraphernalia shoved up the. There's no delicate way to say this. There was paraphernalia shoved up the vaginas of his victims.
Yeah, it was clearly someone who had some sort of beef with sex workers.
Yes, and women.
And it was also the first time that there was kind of a media frenzy over a murderer.
It was the first time.
There was a lot of extensive newspaper coverage, and
the newspaper, in fact, was the Star News.
Yes, and that's what the thing that I did at the beginning, the From Hell letter, is the most well-known and the only letter from the Jack the Ripper serial killer that they believe is legitimate.
Is actually from Jack the Ripper.
There are up to 11 murders that they think Ripper could have been responsible for from 88 to 91.
Yes, and Jack the Ripper never called himself Jack the Ripper.
No, that was the Star, the newspaper.
Yes.
Which is why the book is called The Name of the Star.
Yes.
Because it's talking about all of his stuff. So Rory is a teenager.
Is she 17 or 18?
She's 17.
17, thank you.
She's 17 years old.
But I wasn't sure.
She's 17 years old.
Because it said she was in her senior year, but my birthday's in September. So when people are like, "Oh, it's your senior year of high school," I'm like, "Oh, so you're 18." I was early, so.
Yeah. So I turned 18 in my senior year, but not until halfway into it. So anyway,
Rory is a 17-year-old
Rory's a
girl.
17-year-old American exchange student staying at a school in London whenever the Whitechapel copycat murders start to happen.
Yes, start.
She is not really involved with that at first.
No, she's not. We are introduced to her. She's supposed to have a 3-person room, but she ends up having only a 2-person room, and her roommate is Jezza.
And the school is Wexford.
Yes.
So Rory is at Wexford. Her parents are teaching in Bristol.
Yes.
She meets her roommate Jazza, and she also meets a new friend in the library, a guy named Alistair. Basically, she gets there, and the first bit of the book
She doesn't meet Alistair yet.
Oh, yeah, she hasn't met Alistair yet. The first bit of the book, first off, sidebar. I generally, as a rule, don't really like reading books that are in the first person.
Really?
Generally, if I see that the book is in the first person, and this is not always true, and I should get better about this, but a lot of times I'm like, oh, this is poorly written. Because instead of trying to... There are several different kinds, I'm sure everyone here knows this, but there are several different kinds of points of view from which you can write a book.
Yes.
The most common is probably third-person limited, which is a third-person point of view that follows a specific character or characters, i.e. Harry Potter.
Yes.
There are books that are third-person omniscient, where it is a third-person point of view, but it follows every character, i.e. Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
It'll be with Pippin and Merry at one point, then Frodo at one point.
Aragorn,
but the narrator always knows everything that's going on.
Exactly.
There's second person, which is usually used more in short stories and poetry, because in a long-form novel, it would be a little hard to manage.
And then there's first person.
Which is just like... I went on an adventure with my friends, and we did this or that. I'm trying to think of a famous first-person novel. The Hunger Games is in first person.
Yeah,
that's
Hunger
right.
Games, Twilight is first person.
But you're seeing a theme here. The Hunger Games, Divergent, The Lightning Thief, the first Percy Jackson book.
Oh, yeah, Percy Jackson.
To Kill a Mockingbird is in first person.
Yeah,
but a lot of first-person novels are young adult novels, and sometimes I feel like it's lazy because I feel like that way you don't have to reveal all of the plot, and like if it doesn't match up later, it'd be like, oh well, this character just didn't know about that.
A lot of Molly Harper books, which are supernatural romance books, are in first person, and I adore those.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with first person point of view. I'm just saying that my general my general attitude is to avoid them.
Yeah.
But
from an author's perspective, it is easier to write first
exactly.
person. But at the same time, also from an author's perspective, it is nice to be able to go from a story where you're working on first perspective to third person perspective.
Well, I think when
It's
you're
nice
writing
to
in
have that
first
change.
person, when you're writing in third person, you have more freedom to describe things that are going on. I think that's what it is. I think whenever a book is in first person, I know that a lot of it's going to be dependent on dialogue. Because either the book is dependent on dialogue, or you have a character who seems like they are hyper observant because they're describing in incredible detail everything that's happening around them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mixed bag, but this book is in first person, and I really, really like this book.
I love this
a
book.
lot. Maureen Johnson is an author that I first encountered when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
She had a series of books where there was a girl who fell in love with a ghost that haunted the bedroom in the new house that her family and she had moved into. There's another book about a girl who takes a trip across Europe backpacking at the behest of an aunt of hers who has passed away. But all of her books are like very, very honest portrayals of teenage girls, I feel like. And Rory
both were teenage girls.
Rory is no different. Rory, the first few chapters of the book deal with her getting all packed up and moved to London, meeting her roommate, meeting like the dean of her dorms.
Have you ever studied abroad?
I have done summer semesters abroad, like as a camp counselor. Like the school I was at, I was in a theater troupe. And we went abroad to perform at camps and be camp counselors.
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to study abroad at Oxford.
Beautiful campus.
But I didn't end up going because if I had gone, it would have taken me 4 years to graduate college. And since I was an overachiever who had a bajillion hours per semester, my advisor told me either you can study abroad and do the traditional 4 years, or you can stay here and finish out your semester and graduate in 3, which saved me a significant amount of money. So I didn't end up going to Oxford. But I have done summers abroad with my school.
I did 6 months abroad in Italy, and while I was there, one of my best girlfriends at the time happened to be abroad in Belfast.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of able to go between the two of us. So we would go from Ireland to Italy, and then back to Ireland, and then back to Italy.
Karina did a semester abroad in London.
I will say that it's like studying abroad is
Oxbridge.
Like super exciting. But I had never, when I studied abroad and stuff, it's like, yes, I had been to college and stuff, but I'd never been to sleepaway camp. I'd never been that far from my family before.
Oh, yeah?
And it was terrifying to me.
It is intimidating. Being in a foreign country, especially when you're still a kid, I was 19 when I studied abroad.
Yeah. I was significantly older. We're not going to say how old I was.
I was 19 whenever I went to France and Switzerland. And I had been out of the country before, but it was not quite the same because I had a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
Which I had not been used to. And it was a little scary, but it was also very exhilarating. And I think that Maureen Johnson does a really good job of...
Yes, she does. She does an excellent
portraying
job of,
how Rory's anxious, but how she's...
Especially with Rory, because Rory's like, now that she has Jezza as a roommate, she's like, I didn't realize that my privacy was gone.
Yeah.
I never had a private moment ever again. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, and you see a lot of her anxieties manifesting in, like, what do I wear? How should I put my hair? Like
exactly, because she's in a different country. She doesn't want to stick out.
And so her first few weeks there are fairly uneventful as she gets involved. There's an incident in the cafeteria where she chokes on a piece of her food.
Which, by the way, I felt really bad for her for that. Where it's like, that's how you almost die, is you almost choke. That's not horribly exciting. But
yes.
At least she doesn't die, because that would be a really bad thing in the obituary.
Choked to death on a piece of meat at breakfast or whatever. Yeah, no, that's embarrassing. Yeah. But you actually bring up an interesting point. So, as we mentioned, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you heard our birthday special episode for my birthday, where we read the short story novella about
Boy in the Smoke,
which is a prequel to this. I read that for the first time after having read The Name of the Star. I've read The Name of the Star about 4 times.
See, and I read The Boy in the Smoke and then read The Name of the Star.
So this is interesting because from my perspective, the first time I read Name of the Star, I thought absolutely nothing of this choking on food near-death experience. Like, didn't think anything about it. Just went on my merry way with my reading. But I imagine you having read The Boy in the Smoke beforehand and knowing how this whole seeing ghosts thing
That was the moment I'm like, really? This is the moment she gets superpowers? Really?
Yeah, so...
She chokes on a piece of beef?
So a refresher for those of you who don't remember, in The Boy in the Smoke, we learned that if people are in their young adult puberty ages...
Between 14 and 18 and they have a
near-death experience, they sometimes develop the ability to see spirits.
Yes. To see ghosts.
So this happens to Rory when she chokes on this meat.
Yes.
And like I said, when I read this book for the first time, I had not read the prequel. The prequel didn't even exist
So you
yet.
didn't know that was a major turning point in her life.
I didn't realize it was a major turning point. And so whenever she met Alistair in the library... I didn't immediately...
And see, as soon as she met Alistair, I'm like, he's a ghost.
See, the book definitely makes it clear that there's something strange about Alistair.
The moment she's like, the lights didn't go on for him, I'm like, Alistair's a ghost.
So the book makes it clear to anybody, whether they know the backstory or not, that there's something strange about Alistair, but it does not make clear that he is a ghost for quite some time.
No, it does not.
And I almost would argue that this book is more fun to read without having the backstory.
I would agree.
Because having read it before, it takes about half of the book before Rory even realizes what's happening to her.
Yes, because the first time she meets our main antagonist, she doesn't know it. And the second it happened, for me, I'm like, oh, it's that guy. Because I knew how her powers worked. If you had no idea how her powers worked, you'd just be like, well, that's an odd one-shot sentence.
Right.
But, like, as a writer, I'm like, this is genius.
Yes. So Rory and Jazza hear about this body found in the street where the first Jack Ripper was killed.
Yes, because Rory is infatuated with Jerome.
Which is Jazza's best friend.
And he is a house prefect.
And he is also somewhat of a murderino, so to speak.
Yeah, murderino. He is very obsessed with the story of Jack the Ripper. He loves stuff like this.
So whenever the second victim is announced, a woman named Fiona Chapman, which is the same surname that was held by the second Ripper victim, Annie Chapman.
Yes.
Jerome convinces Rory and Jazza to go to the pub where she was murdered to see the crime scene. And while they're there, Rory bumps into a man at the back of the audience.
Yeah, and she apologizes, says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. And
moves on. Shortly thereafter, an IT woman who programmed the CCTV, because London,
is covered in cameras.
Unlike the United States, while there are surveillance cameras, definitely in big cities, London, there is not a square inch of London.
The U.S. is not covered in surveillance cameras that we know of.
Sure, fair enough. But CCTV is a common knowledge in England. It's been around for a long time, and everyone knows that there's really not a spot in London that isn't covered by CCTV.
Yes.
So this woman who is an IT person who put together the CCTV cameras on the pub. For the pub where the second victim was killed, looks at the video and the killer is invisible. She literally sees a woman being thrown to the ground.
She sees the woman, the knife, and nothing else.
And she doesn't see anyone killing her.
Because they said there was a issue with the cameras.
They said there was a glitch. But she looks it up because she's the one who did it, so she still has access, and she sees that that's not true.
And she puts it on the web.
And she puts it on the internet.
So there's this floating knife going around this woman. Which, that would be horribly disturbing.
Right? What the fuck?
I know, right?
So there's a third murder. The London police are trying to prevent it. They know where it's supposed to happen.
Yes, and so
this is the most terrifying thing.
It's a big deal. The media makes a big, huge deal of it, and so they call it Ripper Night. And so Rory and Jezza sneak out of their girls' dorm, which is highly ill-advised.
Yeah, so the dorms put up a curfew, and the police are like, basically, if you don't have to be going anywhere, don't go anywhere. We know that there's going to be another victim tonight.
And people were having, like, Ripper's Night parties. And I'm like, that's terrible. I'm with Jezza on this, where it's like, this is terrible what people are doing. And so they go to the roof of Jerome's boys' dorm, pretty much, to await the news of the third victim. And nothing happens. Nothing happens. And so they're sneaking back. Rory and Jezza are sneaking back into their dorm through the bathroom window. And Rory sees a man.
He's literally standing outside the window of the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he comments to Rory that it's
right behind her.
He comments that it's a nice night and tells her that she better get inside.
Yeah. And is like, are you sure you should be doing that?
And she mentions it to Jazza, and Jazza's like,
I didn't see anybody.
The next morning, there's a third body on the school campus. And, of course, at this point, everyone freaks the fuck out. The school is like, hey, we had a curfew. We told nobody to go outside. But if you broke curfew and you saw something,
we're not going to punish you.
If you come forward.
Yeah.
And so Rory goes forward and is like, listen.
I saw someone.
And nobody else saw him. And so they don't really believe her.
And this is when she meets Constable Dean, who I have the biggest fictional boy crush on right now.
Oh, Liz.
Congrats, Maureen Johnson. I have another crush on a fictional dark-haired boy with glasses.
Oh, Liz. This book series is going to ruin you.
Probably.
Definitely. I know. I've read it before. So, Rory meets a police officer named Stephen Dean.
Yes.
Who is asking her all these questions and wants to know what's going on.
Fictional boys are the best boys.
She thinks he's a reporter posing as a cop because he's very young for a police officer.
Exceptionally young.
Around the same time, a TV presenter named James Good receives
a letter.
Very, very similar to the From Hell letter.
And a kidney. He receives a letter and a kidney.
Just like the original From Hell letter, which came with a preserved half of a kidney.
Which, no thank you.
Yeah, that's fucked up. So all of this is happening. There's a lot happening. And honestly, at this point, Rory's studies have just completely fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
And then...
because of all the shit that's happening. Her parents are trying to convince her to come to Brighton. And she's like, well, I can't because of my studies, because Saturday class is a thing. Why?
And then... in the middle of all of this, after Rory has confessed to being out on the night of the third murder...
she gets a third roommate.
She gets a new roommate named Boo.
Boo!
Boo...
I kind of like Boo a lot.
Is a very much lower class, middle Londoner, smoker, bright colors in her hair.
Yeah.
Nothing like Jazza, who's very sophisticated and very like...
let's be clear. I am Jazza.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I am Jazza. All my friends are Boo.
Very sophisticated, very high-strung.
Karina's Boo. Mallory is Rory.
At any rate, Jazza does not like Boo. She feels like Boo has been pushed on them because as a variation of punishment
for breaking curfew.
They said they wouldn't punish for breaking curfew, but this is the closest thing they could do to punishing. Boo is very weird. She carries a Walkman.
No, she has an extra cell phone.
She carries an extra cell phone. Yeah, that's right. She carries around 2 cell phones. She disappears.
She doesn't do any studies.
She doesn't do any studies or work. She disappears at all sorts of odd hours.
She has the exact same schedule as Rory, which is odd.
And so eventually, Rory and Boo and Jerome are on a field trip for their art history class at a museum. And Rory sees a woman in one of the rooms while she's with Jerome being all flirty and sexy. And totally ruins the moment by commenting about this woman who he does not see.
Yes. And
so she kind of steps out of the room because she's freaking out. And she sees Boo sneaking out of the museum.
So she follows Boo.
Naturally. Is that what you would do?
Well, yeah. I was going to be like, no, I have more sense. No, I don't. Actually, I would probably follow Boo. But she ends up meeting some suspicious characters at a park with a woman with victory rolls in her hair.
A woman who's dressed like a fucking World War II nurse.
Yeah, with victory rolls in her hair. And she's like...
then somebody walks through the woman.
Yeah, and then Rory freaks
out.
Like, what is going on, and that's when Rory discovers that her near choking incident has given her the ability to see ghosts.
What happens is more complicated than that. What happens is Rory sees a person walk through Joe.
Yes.
Who is the friend that Boo is talking to. And when she sees that, she kind of has a panic attack. Boo grabs her, and then the police officer, Stephen Dean, from before, appears out of nowhere, puts her in his car, and takes her to his house. And so they go back.
I'm not gonna lie, I ship it so hard. So hard. I know, you're not allowed to say anything. I know we've got 3 series and he's probably gonna die at some point, but I still ship it so hard.
So anyway, Stephen and Boo take Rory back to his apartment. There's a guy named Callum there.
I love Callum.
And
I understand Callum.
So Stephen basically gives her the breakdown. You can see ghosts.
Yeah.
And the reason we're keeping an eye on you is because we think that the Ripper copycat is a ghost.
Yeah.
It's not a human being who's decided to copycat Jack the Ripper. There is a ghost out here repeating the charms. And even at this point, they kind of think it's possible that this is the original Ripper.
Yeah, the original
Come
Ripper.
back
as
to repeat his crimes.
But we also go into detail of what happened to everybody else. Stephen says it was a boating accident.
Which,
Callum,
having read the prequel, we know is not true.
It's not true. Boo, hers was a car accident.
A car accident.
And Joe was there to help her out.
Joe saved her.
And so that whole thing that you were talking about at your birthday, where it's like if he hadn't, then the ghost wouldn't have been able to interfere with the Ripper being how he is. He was still able to affect people who saw him, but it still had lasting effects to people who couldn't see him as well.
Yeah, but he's special. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Callum.
And Callum's was the one that definitively did it for me, where he's like, I saw he was cutting through a
construction site.
And he was standing in this puddle of water, and he literally saw this electrical cord fly up and go into the puddle of water to electrocute him.
It was some ghost playing a fucking prank.
Yeah, it was some ghost playing a fucking... Yeah, so I'm like, that's what makes me be like, yes, ghosts can have effect on living human beings even if you can't see them.
And then Alistair, we of course at this point figure out is a ghost, had an asthma attack and died in the library.
Yes.
So, anyway... At this point, Rory doesn't 100% believe what's happening, and so Stephen and Boo take her to the London Underground so that she can have an experience
to spot ghosts
with a ghost.
Yeah.
And they find a ghost out on the underground.
This is one of the saddest things I've ever read in my life.
And she's a jumper.
Yeah.
So this is a woman who jumped in front of the train and killed herself, and now as a ghost, she basically just stands at the edge of the platform where she jumped from.
And says, I jumped.
And Stephen and Boo explained to her that basically they are part of the government, part of MI5.
Yes.
And the reason that MI5 has a department for ghost hunters is because London is a very, very old city.
Yes, very active.
Full of ghosts. And sometimes the ghosts impact things outside of their control or maybe unintentionally, especially on the underground.
And even if you read the prequel, you understand that it's like they used to have a division for this, and then they shut it down for whatever reason.
They shut it down for whatever reason.
They shut it down for whatever reason, and then they had Stephen come back. He was the last of the quote-unquote psych ward people.
Right, yeah. The way they used to find people back in the day when they had this division originally was by going into psych wards and finding teenagers who had had suicide attempts and were talking about having seen someone who wasn't there.
Exactly. Or near-death experiences.
So they pull out these kids and are like, hey, surprise, you're not crazy. But you've spent the last, however many months in a lunatic asylum. But good luck here reestablishing yourself. Stephen is like the last of that brand. Now they have different methods for finding people, which is probably good.
Yeah.
But anyways, so they go onto this platform on the London Underground, and
it's so sad.
They use Boo's mysterious second phone.
Yes.
To to banish the ghost.
You hit the 1 and the 9, and these are the cell phones that we had referenced in the previous Boy in the Smoke episode.
Right, because in Boy in the Smoke, they were using...
They were originally using flashlights, and now they're using cell phones where if you press the 1 and the 9, it completes the circuit to the diamond, which is the grounder. They have Kronos, Persephone, and what's the last one?
Thanatos.
Thank you.
So Kronos being the god of time. Thanatos being the god of death.
Yes.
And Persephone being the goddess of the underworld.
Yeah.
So each of these flawed diamonds is used to banish ghosts back to wherever you go.
And they only have 3.
They only have 3.
That's important. They only have 3.
And, fucking what the fuck? They
there's a light and the jumper disappears.
A whoosh and the jumper disappears. And Callum explains to Rory that this is how they get rid of ghosts.
That's not till later when Callum is like stalking her school and she's like freaking out because she thinks the Ripper's coming after her.
Right. Because before that happens, after she's seen the jumper on the underground, she goes back to school and basically Steven tells her, you just have to go on with your life and just act like everything is normal.
Yeah, Boo's your bodyguard.
Boo's your bodyguard. You're not involved with this. You're a civilian and we can't let you get involved.
Yeah.
But we're going to protect you. So then Boo and Jazza and Rory go to a school dance.
Yes. On Halloween, otherwise known as like the 2nd of November, or no, not the 2nd, 5th of November. 2nd of November is my anniversary.
Bonfire party.
Yeah, the bonfire party. Guy Fawkes night.
Remember the 5th of November.
Yeah, Guy Fawkes night.
They go to this party and
but since November 5th is supposed to be a Ripper night, they do it early.
Yes, so Rory
they go as zombie
steps outside.
Girls.
Yeah, they do Zombie Spice Girls.
The gentleman she saw before
is there.
The night of Ripper night.
Steps outside.
To
see him.
Yeah, and he's like, you come outside or who knows what I'm going to do to your roommate because she can't see me. Because he knows Rory can see him.
Right. So Rory follows him outside. Like, she's like, I don't know what else to do. She follows him outside. Boo follows them. And brings out her cell phone. Yeah. In an attempt to get rid of the Ripper.
And he is like, are there any others like you? And she's like, a couple back home.
But he knows that Boo can see him. He grabs her and throws her in front of a car that is driving
Boo is
by.
Hit by a car.
So then she's taken to the hospital, and Steven
was there.
Yeah, Steven comes out of his car.
Was calling Steven and is like, he's here.
And so Steven shows up just after Boo's been hit by the car and takes Rory.
Sweeps Rory away to protect her.
And she's able to tell them at this point definitively it is not the original Jack the Ripper. This person died much more recently. He wears clothes like in Seinfeld, is what she says.
Yeah,
clothes. He's someone who died in like the 90s.
Yeah.
And at this point,
eyes of indeterminate color, but they were crazy and bald-headed.
Yes. So then Steven and Rory see on the news that there's been a Ripper conference that was supposed to be held, but the lights went out, and when they came back on, the name of the star is what you fear, is written on the whiteboard.
And the name of the star is Jack the Ripper, which is the name that the serial killer was given by the Star newspaper.
But at first they think it's something from the Book of Revelation.
They do. They originally think it's something from the Book of Revelations.
But then they eventually,
because
Rory's the one who...
the name of the star is also a reference to Lucifer.
It's Wormwood.
Yes, Wormwood.
The star Wormwood, which poisoned a third of the planet's water supply.
Yes, thank you.
In the Revelations.
I'm a little rusty on my Revelations.
Oh, not me, buddy. And then we also hear the last sentence of the James Good letter, which is, I look forward to visiting the one with the sight to know me and plucking out her eyes.
Yes, because that was cut off from the original broadcast.
So so now we know that he is intentionally following the Ripper murders, and he wants to kill Rory. And so she's freaking
out. She's 17.
Freaking out a little bit.
No 17-year-old wants to die. I mean, nobody wants to die in general, but no 17-year-old wants to die at the hand of a ghost serial killer.
Right. So Steven gives Rory a terminus.
Yes, which is the cell phone.
Yeah, the phone.
A terminus is what the London ghost hunters use to send ghosts on to the afterlife.
So he gives her one of their 3 terminus.
Yes, he gives her Persephone.
Which is indicative that he's really worried about this at this point.
Steven's really worried.
Steven is...
From what we knew about
Steven is very grown up for his age.
He is.
And he doesn't express his emotions very readily. So you really have to kind of look into, like, the actions that he takes.
Exactly.
To determine how he's feeling. And
That's why he is my new fictional boyfriend.
And the fact that he gives Rory, who is again, as he called her, a civilian.
17-year-old girl.
A 17-year-old civilian. He gives her one of the 3 termini. They only have 3.
Terminuses?
Terminuses?
Termices.
Termini. Anyways, he gives her one. They only have 3, so he's already got a limited supply, and now he's giving one to a civilian teenager, which is even though he's acting very calm, it's a pretty good indication that he's really starting to be afraid.
Yeah, he's freaking out.
He's afraid for her. So...
Because, she's young and southern and cute.
So Rory gets a text message from the Ripper telling her to go to a disused tube station in King William Street.
On the final Ripper night.
On the final Ripper night. Stephen and Boo and Callum start doing some research, and they find out that in the 90s...
there was a drugs bust deal.
There was a drugs bust deal there.
That went wrong.
And 6 cops died, including Alexander Newman, who was a member of a special operatives branch who was there that night and died.
I believe Stephen said the file seems light.
Yeah, it at this
for
point,
that level of courage.
At this point, as a reader, you're starting to feel some funny business is happening.
Funny business is happening.
Because a drugs bust that killed 6 cops.
Yeah,
there should be more information, and
there should be more information. There should also be people who had drugs.
Yeah,
besides just 6
no
cops.
Drugs were recovered. No drug operatives were recovered. Just
and
6
so,
dead cops.
Also, too, the Ripper has stated something about Rory, and so now they're like, okay, well, we need to keep Rory with us because we don't know what he's going to do.
Right.
We thought he would come here. He's not going to come here. He's trying to get Rory to come to him. So they sneak Rory out of her dorm. Mm-hmm. And then they go to the station.
They go to the police station.
They go to the police station
to see if they can get more information on the drugs bust.
About this drugs bust.
And Sergeant Maybride, who is the only, the first responder who got there, says
he was like, there's something wrong about this.
He says that when he got there, there were 5 bodies in one place, and then Newman's body was further down the tunnels.
Yes.
And he was dead, and he was holding a Walkman.
He was clutching a Walkman as tight as he could.
And he suspects that instead of it being a drugs bust, whatever this sketchy operation was down in the tunnels, Newman snapped, killed all 5 of the other members of it, and then himself. Because
none of the other 5 people looked like they were defending themselves. They looked like they died doing normal things. So Newman probably snapped and did something.
So basically, this indicates to us as readers and to Stephen
that this was the
original task force.
This was the original Ghostbusters unit.
The MI5 department that was supposed to hunt ghosts in London was kept in a tunnel in the tube station instead of in a regular police department because they were top secret.
A disused tube station, yeah.
Newman had beef.
And it's also in a location that's highly haunted because it was an area that was heavily bombed during World War II.
Right, so Newman has beef. Newman probably has some mental health issues.
Yeah.
And he kills his fellow officers who are also part of MI5.
And a Walkman would be an excellent place to hide a terminus in the 90s.
And then he kills himself while clutching what we believe was a terminus.
Yes, and Stephen doesn't know how to handle this because he's like, they were us.
Yeah, well, because Stephen's always been told, and this is the beginning. You'll see as we read more books.
I know it's the beginning.
You'll see as we read more of the books in the series that just like every other government department that has ever existed, there's some fucked up shit and there's some sketchy...
There's always sketchy shit when it comes to the government.
They're hiding things from people in their own... even people within the government with him. Stephen was told when he started this unit, we disbanded the unit in the early 90s.
No, they all died.
Yeah,
because one of them snapped.
no one told Steven that one of them murdered all the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, yeah, it was disbanded in the 90s, and then we decided we needed it again. They're not giving him all the information, so this is the first time Steven, who is like a rule follower by nature,
he
is hearing.
Steven has what is known as Boy Scout syndrome.
And martyr syndrome?
And martyr syndrome. He is the Scott Summers of... to do a Marvel reference there, he is the Scott Summers of the Ghostbusters.
Don't call him that. I hate Scott Summers. Anyway,
sorry.
Continuing on. I love Steven. Don't like Scott. Moving on. Getting distracted again. So Steven is like being faced with like a certain amount of like shock that he's been lied to.
Yeah.
A doubt about whether or not he should trust his superiors, and also is still trying to deal with keeping a 17-year-old girl from getting murdered by a ghost.
Yes.
So
it's a tough day for Steven. They go down into the
She
tunnels.
convinces Steven to let her be bait. Rory does.
Yeah.
And so Callum and Steven...
Which is very, very brave for a 17-year-old girl.
For a 17-year-old girl who has never had any involvement with this guy.
I'd be like, fuck no.
I want to go home.
Because she even says she considers running.
The way she figures is if she runs, he'll follow her because ghosts in this universe are not bound to a specific location.
No, he can travel and he can find her and he can still kill her.
And she's also worried about her friends. He's already hurt Boo. Like, what's going to happen to Jazza?
She doesn't want him to hurt Jezza or Jerome.
And
her
so,
parents.
So she decides that the best thing she can do is face him and try to get rid of him.
Yeah.
So she convinces Steven and Callum to take her down to the tubes. She goes down by herself and they follow behind.
Yes. Quietly.
They get back to the bottom of this place and they come down here and he does the
villain monologue.
Traditional villain monologue. Like full out, like I hated being an MI5 and like they wouldn't listen to my ideas.
I was a psychologist.
I was experimenting on children to see if I could make them see ghosts.
He was taking them to the brink of death and then bringing them back to see if they could see ghosts.
And what the final thing that happened was that he finally killed one of them by mistake.
Yeah, he killed one of them on accident.
He killed a child.
He killed a young girl.
Trying to make her
see ghosts.
A seer. And surprisingly...
Because he was trying to find what made people see ghosts.
And surprising no one, the authorities were not happy about this.
No, and they left him out to dry, which they should have.
So they threw him out.
Because that was not his job, was to find out what made you see ghosts. His job was to make sure the ghosts didn't do anything stupid.
Now, there's definitely an argument to be made for, learning about things and, like, they should have been more open with their subordinates. However, nothing gives you a right to experiment on teenagers.
No.
And potentially kill them.
Especially if they don't know what they're signing up for.
Honestly, I feel like the fact that he just got fired is not nearly enough. Like, the only reason he wasn't prosecuted is because this
was a secret branch and nobody can know about it.
The entire organization was secret, and that's the only reason he didn't get prosecuted. So he came back down to the tunnels to talk to his former co-workers.
Yes.
And he killed all of them.
And he's like, the only reason I brought the gun is in case they wouldn't give me a terminus. Because a terminus was the only way he felt safe. Because, like Callum, which I think this is important, like Callum, he...
developed his abilities after being targeted by a ghost.
Yeah, he developed his abilities after being targeted by a ghost. He had a ghost throw him off his motorcycle.
And so he is afraid of ghosts. He wants to have a terminus to keep himself safe. He goes down there, demands a terminus. They refuse, and he shoots all of them. Takes the terminus, and then shoots himself.
Yes.
And
so... it's terrible.
We also forgot to mention that before they get down to the bottom of the... Since we're going to talk about Steven and Rory.
Mm-hmm. Callum and Boo.
Oh, well, no, not even that. But
ship that, too.
Yeah, it's good. Good shit. Good
shit.
No, before they go... Once she decides she wants to face off with Alexander, Steven is really impressed with Rory and her bravery.
Yes.
And he tells her the truth about how he developed the site.
Yes.
Which, as you know from the prequel, he tried to hang himself after his sister died of an overdose. He tells her that it wasn't a boating accident, but he's told everyone that it was. No one has questioned him on that, and he never wanted to talk about it.
He's like, I told Callum I went to the boathouse, and then Callum just inferred it was a boating accident.
Right.
And I never corrected him. That I tried to hang myself.
So, anyway.
Ship.
They have this moment together before they go down into the tube station.
And she's like, "Are you telling me this because you think it's important, or because you think I'm going to die?"
He does. He's scared for her, but he's
Yeah.
not gonna let her die. Is basically what.
And
he
I
tells
like
her.
what Joe said in the book, because I feel like this is very important and very applicable to our current time right now. Is that the country was saved by young people and the courage of youth.
Yeah.
The courage of young people, the courage of teenagers, people who are Rory's age. And I see that now in America, where our country is going to be run by the youth of today. I see it. They're courageous and brave and active, and I applaud them.
So, once they're down in the tube station,
the lights go out.
Newman turns out all the lights, and he knows that Stephen is there.
He knows Stephen's there. He knows Callum's there.
And he
And this is something that, like, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe, but this was the thing that made me ship it really hard. Was when Stephen puts his arms around Rory and puts her against the wall. And then he's like, I'm gonna go take care of this. I'm like, Stephen! You knight in shining fucking armor, you're gonna get yourself killed.
So anyway, Stephen gets injected with a lethal dose of insulin.
What did I say?
And Newman basically says that he has hidden the treatment somewhere in the tube station.
Yes, the antidote.
They're never going to find it in time, but if they give him all three of the termini, he will.
Maureen Johnson, what's the proper term for multiple terminuses? And listen to our podcast.
He says, I will trade all three terminus for the cure for Stephen, or Stephen can die.
Yeah.
It's up to y'all.
And so they give him
Rory
Thanatos.
and Callum immediately hand over Thanatos and Persephone. No. Thanatos and the time. Kronos. They immediately hand them over, despite Stephen's insistence that they don't, and that they just let him die, because Stephen is
Rory
like that.
Rory tells him Persephone is not there.
And he loses his shit. Newman has a meltdown.
He loses his shit.
And she's like, okay, I will take you to it. But you have to cure Stephen first.
And Newman agrees.
He cures Stephen. And then he locks Stephen and Callum in the tube station and takes Rory across town
back to school.
To the school
where
to
Boo
get.
is who has Persephone.
So he throws Thanatos and Kronos
into the
Thames. So they're gone.
Yeah. They're
Goodbye.
Gone forever.
And
goodbye.
The third one's still at Wexford with Boo.
Yes. Who is wheelchair bound now.
Yes, after being hit by a car, she's in a wheelchair. And so Rory shows up back at the dorm and is like, I need the terminus. And Boo hands it over.
Because Boo can see the guy who literally beat the house prefect into unconsciousness with a fucking lamp.
Yeah.
Which I don't like her either, but I don't think she deserves to be beaten into unconsciousness with a fucking lamp.
Right. Charlotte.
Yes.
So Charlotte gets beaten unconscious. Boo hands over the terminus to Newman, and he says, okay, now I'm going to kill you, Rory. And she says...
And she's like, not here.
Can you not do it in front of Boo?
Yeah.
Can we go into the bathroom? And he's like, fine, whatever. Takes her to the bathroom, slashes her across the stomach.
Yeah.
And then puts the terminus in her hand. Says, I was holding a terminus when I died, and I came back. So maybe...
As a very strong ghost. Maybe this is what...
Maybe this will give you a better chance of coming back.
And he's trying to get her to hold the one in the night, and she physically can't do it. And then suddenly, the door to the girls' bathroom bursts in, and there is Joe.
No, it doesn't burst in. She comes through it.
She comes through the door. There's Joe.
Joe comes in, phases through the bathroom door, and takes the terminus, and uses it on Newman.
Yes.
Which also sends Joe on
to the next
and
life.
Completely destroys the terminus.
And it also completely destroys the bathroom as well.
And Rory blacks out.
She wakes up in the hospital. She survived.
She wakes up in the hospital. Stephen's there. And he's fine.
Yeah. He's been in the same hospital, and he's like, are you alright?
Yes. And so the higher-ups... come and talk to Rory.
Yeah.
They debrief her.
And they're basically like, it's best if you forget everything that happened.
Go ahead and forget everything that you happened. The story is that the modern-day Ripper attacked you in this bathroom and then ran from the police and fell into the Thames and drowned. Mm-hmm. That's the story we're telling people, and we're not going to tell anybody that he attacked you.
Yeah.
We will tell them that he attacked a fifth victim, but that they survived. We're not going to put your name out there so that you don't get attention from this.
Yeah. So and we're also not saying he targeted you either.
Yeah. And so
and
Rory's
we're definitely
parents,
not saying he's a ghost.
Rory's parents want to take her to Bristol, and she finally agrees. And so
she doesn't really agree so much as concede.
Yeah.
Because both of her parents are like, we're taking you to fucking Bristol. Which, by the way, if I was Rory's mother, I'd be like, you would have been in Bristol a long time
ago. So she is packing up to leave for Bristol.
Yeah, now that she's recovered. She says she has a scar that goes, like, from under her belly button down to the top of her right thigh.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's a bad cut.
Yeah, so she goes to collect all of her things from the school, and she sees a ghost in the women's bathroom.
Yeah, she goes to the bathroom.
There's a crack in the floor, and a ghost has come up.
Yeah, she's oddly drawn to the bathroom.
She goes
and there's
to
a crack
see
in
it.
the floor, and this ghost has come up, and she tries to do what Boo did, which is talk to her and comfort her. But as soon as she tries to touch her, there is a bright light, and the ghost vanishes, which makes me think
that Rory is
a human terminus.
Yeah.
Is that totally a thing?
That's the thing.
I was right! Sorry.
So
I'm super excited! I was right! My theory was right! Rory's a human terminus! Oh my god! I'm like, Rory's now fucking Persephone!
Really?
Oh my god!
Right, they don't have any more Termini. But Rory had Persephone, was there when Persephone was destroyed, and somehow latched onto her, and now she can do that.
I am so fucking excited! I was right!
Anyway. Anyway.
When I texted you, I'm like, remind me to talk about theories. I'm like, I think Rory's a human terminus.
So,
oh my god,
this is the first book in the Shades of London series. There are currently 3 books in the Shade of London series. The Madness Underneath and the Shadow Cabinet are the 2 following.
Mm-hmm.
There is supposed to be a 4th one. Hypothetically,
Maureen Johnson is coming out to the sequel to Truly Devious this week, I believe.
Right, and I expect after that's come out, we'll hear more details about the 4th Shades of London book, because it is supposed to come out this year. I don't know if it will, because it was all supposed to come out in 2017. I will say that the 3rd Shades of London book, The Shadow Cabinet, ends on a...
Was it The Shadow Cabinet, or was it the one before that you said ended on a terrible cliffhanger?
No, it's The Shadow Cabinet.
Then we're going to wait till the next one comes out.
I can't do that.
I'm going to wait until the next one comes out.
Yeah, The Shadow Cabinet ends on a really intense
We're ending on Rory being a human fucking terminus on this one.
Oh yeah, no, it's way worse.
That's a pretty intense
It's way worse than that. It's way worse than that.
I hate you. Maureen Johnson, I love you and hate you in equal measure.
Maureen Johnson, listen to our podcast.
Please
we love you. How many bottles would you give The Name of the Star?
Oh my god, it was so good. I loved it. It was a little slow to get started, but I totally understand why, because we had to have all that establishment. As a reader, I'm like, it's pretty slow, but as a writer, I'm like, yes, this is necessary.
And it picks up like the hell.
Yeah, as
the last first 5 chapters, you're just like...
Yeah, it's like in 3 acts. The first act is kind of slow. The second act is like, okay, things are getting good. And the third act, you're like, done. What's next? I'd say 4 bottles.
Yeah, me too.
4 bottles.
I've got
2 in a row.
It's 2 in a row that I've given 4 bottles to. I've gone through this before, and I think it was whenever we read the prequel novella that I talked about how I feel like young adult novels are an underrated genre. But Maureen Johnson specifically, I've always really enjoyed her work.
So good.
It's very compelling. I love ghost stories, and this is like a fresh take on ghost stories. Like, yeah, we've seen like a Ghostbusters movie, and yeah, but this is like a fresh take on it. It adds in like the fascination that like not only London but the whole world has with Jack the Ripper, and then it adds in these interesting character dynamics.
Yeah, and I like that in this book, the guy brings up, he's like, yeah, the only reason I was copying Jack the Ripper was to get your attention.
Yeah, he knew it would get the Shades' attention.
Exactly.
So,
which is what the super secret London Ghostbusters call themselves.
The Shades.
The Shades.
So yeah, I really love this series. I really love Rory as a narrator. I really love Steven in general. I
love Rory as a narrator because she goes through all this, like, super scary stuff, but you never forget she's a teenager.
Yeah, she's scared as shitless the whole time.
Yeah, because a lot of authors, when they're like, yeah, this teenager is going through this thing, they sometimes kind of step out of that whole kind of teenager mentality.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, suddenly my paper on Alexander Pope didn't seem important anymore.
Yeah, and Maureen Johnson is excellent at writing teenage characters.
Yes.
They are convincing, they're legitimate, like they feel like teenagers and young adults, like, because Steven and Callum are a little bit older, but they are still young adults. And, like, after many, many years of watching...
Even Bo was 20.
Yeah, Boo's, like, 20. And, like, after years and years of reading young adult novels where teenagers were written by adult men who clearly had no idea what it was like to be a teenage girl, Maureen Johnson's work is always very refreshing, and this particular series has stuck with me for years and years ever since the first time I read it.
Side tangent. That is something that drives me nuts. Is like you can always tell a teenage girl written by a middle-aged man because the teenage girl is always like upset by the fact that she has boobs,
or that they're not big enough,
or that they're not big enough, or the fact that they're like not as feminine as their. I'm like, okay, no. I was a teenage girl. I'm telling you that didn't happen. Side tangent over.
Anyway. The Name of the Star, we give it 4 solid bottles out of 5, which is pretty damn good. If you would like to check out Maureen Johnson's work,
please do. She's a delight.
She is online. She's on Twitter, and she's got her own website where you can check out all of her books. Like I said, I love this series, but she's also got an excellent series featuring a sexy Spanish ghost boy.
Ooh.
She's got a book series featuring a girl on a whirlwind European adventure. A lot of books that I really love. I would strongly recommend. And we will see you next time. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturePodcast.com or check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation.
Cheers.